Hello everyone. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing well. And if you're not, I hope you will be. I hope you will be. I'm going to be reading some short stories tonight for those of you who like falling asleep, listening to someone simply speaking or reading. Maybe some of you just like to hear a story. The first two are quite short, about 4 and 7 pages, and the third one is a little bit longer, at about 20. But when you read out loud, it can take quite a while, so I'm sure we'll be here for a little bit, as long as you need. So, without wasting too much time tonight, I will begin. The first story is a part of Ted Chiang's collection Exhalation, which is a wonderful series of sci-fi short stories. They're fantastic, and I'll be reading a story called What's Expected of Us. This is a warning. Please read carefully. By now you've probably seen a predictor. Millions of them have been sold by the time you're reading this. For those who haven't seen one, it's a small device, like a remote for opening your car door. Its only features are a button and a big green LED. The light flashes if you press the button. Specifically, the light flashes 1 second before you press the button. Most people say that when they first try it, it feels like they're playing a strange game, one where the goal is to press the button after seeing the flash, and it's easy to play. But when you try to break the rules, you find that you can't. If you try to press the button without having seen a flash, the flash immediately appears, and no matter how fast you move, you never push the button until a second has elapsed. If you wait for the flash, intending to keep from pressing the button afterwards, the flash never appears. No matter what you do, the light always precedes the button press. There's no way to fool a predictor. The heart of each predictor is a circuit with a negative time delay. It sends a signal back in time. The full implications of the technology will become apparent later, when negative delays of greater than a second are achieved. But that's not what this warning is about. The immediate problem is that predictors demonstrate that there is no such thing as free will. There have always been arguments showing that free will is an illusion, some based on hard physics, others based on pure logic. Most people agree these arguments are irrefutable, but no one ever really accepts the conclusion. The experience of having free will is too powerful for an argument to overrule. What it takes is a demonstration, and that's what a predictor provides. Typically, a person plays with a predictor compulsively for several days, showing it to friends, trying various schemes to outwit the device. The person may appear to lose interest in it, but no one can forget what it means. Over the following weeks, the implications of an immutable future sink in. Some people, realizing that their choices don't matter, refuse to make any choices at all. Like a legion of Bartleby the Scriveners, they no longer engage in spontaneous action. Eventually, a third of those who play with a predictor must be hospitalized, because they won't feed themselves. The end state is akinetic mutism, a kind of waking coma. They'll track motion with their eyes and change position occasionally, but nothing more. The ability to move remains, but the motivation is gone. Before people started playing with predictors, akinetic mutism was very rare, a result of damage to the anterior cingulate region of the brain. Now it spreads like a cognitive plague. People used to speculate about a thought that destroys the thinker, some unspeakable Lovecraftian horror or a Gödel sequence that crashes the human logical system. It turns out that the disabling thought is one that we've all encountered. The idea that free will doesn't exist. It just wasn't harmful until you believed it. Doctors try arguing with the patients while they still respond to conversation. We had all been living happy, active lives before they reason. And we hadn't had free will then either. Why should anything change? No action you took last month was any more freely chosen than one you take today, a doctor might say. You can still behave that way now. The patients invariably respond. But now, I know. And some of them never say anything again. Some will argue that the fact the predictor causes this change in behaviour means that we do have free will. An automaton can't become discouraged. Only a free-thinking entity can. The fact that some individuals descend into akinetic mutism while others don't just highlights the importance of making a choice. Unfortunately, such reasoning is faulty. Every form of behaviour is compatible with determinism. One dynamic system may fall into a basin of attraction and wind up at a fixed point, while another exhibits chaotic behaviour indefinitely. But both are completely deterministic. I'm transmitting this warning to you from just over a year in your future. It's the first lengthy message received when circuits with negative delays in the megasecond range are used to build communication devices. Other messages will follow, addressing other issues. My message to you is this. Pretend that you have free will. It is essential that you behave as if your decisions matter, even though you know they don't. The reality isn't important. What's important is your belief. And believing the lie is the only way to avoid a waking coma. Civilization now depends on self-deception. Perhaps it always has. And yet I know that, because free will is an illusion, it's all predetermined who will descend into akinetic mutism and who won't. There's nothing anyone can do about it. You can't choose the effect the predictor has on you. Some of you will succumb, and some of you won't. And my sending this warning won't alter those proportions. So why did I do it? Because I had no choice. That is the first story. That is the first story. The second story I will be reading is from Murakami's The Elephant Vanishes. Like that. It is The Little Green Monster from The Elephant Vanishes. My husband left for work as usual, and I couldn't think of anything to do. I sat alone in the chair by the window, staring out at the garden through the gap between the curtains. Not that I had any reason to be looking at the garden. There was nothing else for me to do. And I thought that sooner or later, if I sat there looking, I might think of something. Of all the many things in the garden, the one I looked at most was the oak tree. It was my special favourite. I had planted it when I was a little girl, and watched it grow. I thought of it as my old friend. I talked to it all the time in my head. That day, too, I was probably talking to the oak tree. I don't remember what about, and I don't know how long I was sitting there. The time slips by when I'm looking at the garden. It was dark before I knew it. I must have been there quite a while. Then, all at once, I heard a sound. It came from somewhere far away, a funny, muffled sort of rubbing sort of sound. At first I thought it was coming from a place deep inside me, that I was hearing things, a warning from the dark cocoon my body was spinning within. I held my breath and listened. Yes, no doubt about it. Little by little, the sound was moving closer to me. What was it? I had no idea. But it made my flesh creep. The ground near the base of the tree began to bulge upward, as if some thick, heavy liquid were rising to the surface. Again, I caught my breath. Then the ground broke open and the mounded earth crumbled away to reveal a set of sharp claws. My eyes locked onto them, and my hands turned into clenched fists. Something's going to happen, I said to myself. It's starting now. The claws scraped hard at the soil, and soon the break in the earth was an open hole, from which there crawled a little green monster. Its body was covered with shining green scales. As soon as it emerged from the hole, it shook itself until the bits of soil clinging to it dropped away. It had a long, funny nose, the green of which gradually deepened toward the tip. The very end was narrow and pointed as a whip, but the beast's eyes were exactly like a human's. The sight of them sent a shiver through me. They showed feelings, just like your eyes, or mine. Without hesitation, but moving slowly and deliberately, the monster approached my front door, and on which it began to knock with the slender tip of its nose. The dry rapping sound echoed through the house. I tiptoed to the back room, hoping the beast would not realize I was there. I couldn't scream. Ours is the only house in the area, and my husband wouldn't be coming back from work until late at night. I couldn't run out the back door either, since my house has only the one door, the very one on which a horrible green monster was now knocking. I breathed as quietly as I could, pretending not to be there, hoping the thing would give up and go away. But it didn't give up. Its nose went from knocking to groping at the lock. It seemed to have no trouble at all clicking the lock open. And then the door itself opened a crack. Around the edge of the door crept the nose, and then it stopped. For a long time it stayed still, like a snake with its head raised, checking conditions in the house. If I had known this was going to happen, I could have stayed by the door and cut the nose off. I told myself, the kitchen has plenty of sharp knives. No sooner had the thought occurred to me than the creature moved past the edge of the door, smiling, as if it had read my mind. Then it spoke, not with a stutter, but repeating certain words, as if it were still trying to learn them. It wouldn't have done you any good, the little green monster said. My nose is like a lizard's tail. It always grows back, stronger and longer, stronger and longer. You'd just get the opposite of what you want. Then it spun its eyes for a long time, like two weird tops. Oh no, I thought to myself. Can it read people's minds? I hate to have anyone know what I'm thinking, especially when that someone is a horrible and inscrutable little creature like this. I broke out in a cold sweat from head to foot. What was this thing going to do to me? Eat me? Take me down into the earth? Oh well, at least it wasn't so ugly that I couldn't stand looking at it. That was good. It had slender, pink little arms and legs jutting out from its green-scaled body, and long claws at the ends of its hands and feet. They were almost darling, the more I looked at them, and I could see, too, that the creature meant no harm. Of course not, it said to me, cocking its head. Its scales clicked against one another when it moved, like crammed-together coffee cups rattling on a table when you nudge it. What a terrible thought, madam. Of course I wouldn't eat you. No, no, no. I mean you no harm, no harm, no harm. So I was right. It knew exactly what I was thinking. Madam, don't you see? I've come here to propose to you. From deep, deep, deep down, deep down, deep. I had to crawl all the way up here, up. Awful, it was awful. I had to dig and dig and dig. Look at how it ruined my claws. I could never have done this if I meant you any harm. Any harm. Any harm. I love you. I love you so much I couldn't stand it anymore. Down deep, down deep. I crawled my way up to you. I had to. They tried to stop me, but I couldn't take it anymore. And think of the courage that it took, please, took. What if you thought it was rude and presumptuous? Rude and presumptuous for a creature like me to propose to you. But it is rude and presumptuous, I said in my mind. What a rude little creature you are to come seeking my love. A look of sadness came over the monster's face as soon as I thought this, and its scales took on a purple tinge, as if to express what it was feeling. Its entire body seemed to shrink a little, too. I folded my arms to watch these changes occurring. Maybe something like this would happen whenever its feelings altered, and maybe its awful-looking exterior masked a heart that was as soft and vulnerable as a brand-new marshmallow. If so, I knew I could win. I decided to give it a try. You are an ugly little monster, you know, I shouted in my mind's loudest voice, so loud it made my heart reverberate. You are an ugly little monster. The purple of the scales grew deeper, and the thing's eyes began to bulge, as if they were sucking in all the hatred I was sending them. They protruded from the creature's face like ripe green figs, and tears like red juice ran down from them, splattering on the floor. I wasn't afraid of the monster anymore. I painted pictures in my mind of all the cruel things I wanted to do to it. I tied it down to a heavy chair with thick wires, and with a needle-nose pliers, I began ripping out its scales at the roots, one by one. I heated the point of a sharp knife, and with it I cut deep grooves in the soft pink flesh of its calves. Over and over, I stabbed a hot, soldering iron into the bulging figs of its eyes. With each new torture I imagined for it, the monster would lurch and writhe and wail in agony, as if those things were actually happening to it. It wept its coloured tears and oozed thick gobs of liquid onto the floor, emitting a grey vapour from its ears that had the fragrance of roses. Its eyes sent an unnerving glare of reproach at me. "Please, madam," it said. "Oh, please, I beg of you, don't think such terrible thoughts. I have no evil thoughts for you. I would never harm you. All I feel for you is love, But I refused to listen. In my mind I said, "Don't be ridiculous. You crawled out of my garden. You unlocked my door without permission. You came inside my house. I never asked you here. I have the right to think anything I want to." And I continued to do exactly that, thinking at the creature increasingly terrible thoughts. I cut and tormented its flesh with every machine and tool I could think of, overlooking no method that might exist to torture a living being and make it writhe in pain. See then, you little monster, you have no idea what a woman is. There's no end to the number of things I can think of to do to you. But soon the monster's outlines began to fade, and even its strong green nose shriveled up until it was no bigger than a worm. Writhing on the floor, the monster tried to move its mouth and speak to me, struggling to open its lips as if it wanted to leave me some final message, to convey some ancient wisdom, some crucial bit of knowledge that it had forgotten to impart to me. Before that could happen, the mouth attained a painful stillness, and soon it went out of focus and disappeared. The monster now looked like nothing more than a pale evening shadow. All that remained, suspended in the air, were its mournful, bloated eyes. That won't do any good, I thought to it. You can look all you want, but you can't say a thing. You can't do a thing. Your existence is over, finished, done. Soon the eyes dissolved into emptiness, and the room filled with the darkness of night. That story, like many of Murakami's, was translated by J. Rubin. That is the end of our second story. So we have one left, though a fair bit longer. The final story that I will read is a short story from Carmen Maria Machado. Machado? Machado. I'm going to look up the pronunciation of that one quickly. The final book that I will be reading a short story from is From Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. These are some wonderfully terrifying and creepy, horror-y, feministy, full of sex and violence, all the good stuff. The story I'm going to be reading is called Mothers. Here she is, on the porch, all straw hair and slumpy joints and a crack that passes through her lip, like she is dirt that has never known rain. In her arms is a baby, genderless, red, not making any sort of noise. Bad, I say. She kisses the baby on the ear, and then hands it to me. I flinch when she extends her arms, but take the infant just the same. Babies are heavier than you'd think. She's yours, Bad says. I look down at the baby, who stares at me with wide eyes that shimmer like Japanese beetles. Her fingers curl around invisible locks of hair, and her sharp little nails dig into her skin. A feeling settles over me, a one-beer-deep feeling, a no more skittering feet after the trap snaps feeling. I look back at Bad. What do you mean she's mine? Bad looks at me as if I am unfathomably stupid, or possibly fucking with her, or both. I was pregnant. Now there's a baby. She's yours. My brain doubles back on the sentence. For months my head had been so fuzzy. Mail is stacked unread on my kitchen table, and my clothes are a giant mound on my once immaculate floor. My uterus contracts in protest, confused. Look, Bad says, there's only so much that I can do. I can't do any more than that, right? I agree, but something feels wrong about following her down this line of reasoning. Dangerous. You can only do as much as you can do, I repeat anyway. Good, Bad says. When the baby cries, she could be hungry or thirsty or angry or cranky or sick or sleepy or paranoid or jealous, or she had planned something, but it went horribly awry. So you'll need to take care of that when it happens. I look down at the baby, who is not crying now. She blinks sleepily, and I find myself wondering if dinosaurs ever blinked in the same way, before they were incinerated to dust. The baby relaxes, putting even more weight into her body than I thought possible, and curls her head against my breasts. She even purses her lips a little, as if she thinks she might be able to nurse. I am not your mother, baby, I say. I can't feed you. I am so hypnotized by her that I miss the receding footsteps, the crack of the slamming car door. But then Bad is gone, and for once I am not alone after. Back inside, I realize I don't even know the baby's name. On the floor is a small cloth bag that I don't remember receiving. I go into the kitchen, where I sit down on a sagging cane chair. I imagine the chair breaking beneath me with the baby in my arms, and I stand back up and lean against the counter. "Hello, baby," I say to the baby. Her lids swing open again, and she fixes my face in her gaze. "Hello, baby. What's your name?" The baby doesn't respond, but she also doesn't cry, which surprises me. I am a stranger. She has never seen me before. If she cries, it is to be expected. There are reasons. But what does it mean that she doesn't cry? Is she afraid? She doesn't look afraid. Perhaps babies are not capable of terror. She looks like she is working something out. She smells clean, but chemical, and behind it an edge of milk, bodily and sour, like something tipped askance. Her nose leaks a little, and she does not move to wipe it. There is a crash, a shrill wail. I jump. The baby has reached out her hand and caught a banana in the fruit bowl and taken down 6 pears. The hard pears roll, and the overripe ones splat. Now the baby does look terrified. She howls. I kiss the soft spot on her baby's skull and carry her into the next room. Baby. Her mouth is an endless cavern into which light and thought and sound descend, never to return. Shh, baby. Why didn't Bad tell me her name? Shh, little thing, shh. My head throbs with the sound. Identical tears slide eye to eye on each side of her face, like a picture of a baby crying. And not a baby at all. Shh, little thing, shh. A brisk breeze whisks through the dust outside, and the screen door slams open. I jump. She screams. When David and Ruth were married, they had a full Latin Mass. Ruth's veil covered her face, and the hem bumped over the floor as she walked down the aisle. A sea of hats and veils covered up women's updos, as per the request of the couple. The service was beautiful and old, connecting them to millennia. At the reception, a woman in a cummerbund swept by me. I became very conscious of the way I chewed. I almost hadn't noticed her in the crowd of relatives and friends. She'd registered as a very slight man. But no, her high cheekbones and feminine way of crossing her feet on an invisible line that ran on the floor gave her away. I watched as the party wore on, through the toasts, through the chicken dance, through Ruth's 12-year-old cousin doing a scandalous descent to the floor, butt first, upsetting her father, and when the dance floor cleared a bit, the woman stepped out beneath the white Christmas lights wrapped in muslin, popped out her collar, rolled up her starched sleeves, and began to dance. I'd always heard that weddings were supposed to make women horny, and for the first time I understood. She moved with a flinty, masculine cool, such confidence, and I found myself unable to focus on anything else in the room. I got wet. I felt inadequate, too warm, inexplicably hungry. When she approached me, my heart slowed. She spun me around like a good swing partner, assured, in control. I let myself go and laughed involuntarily. Gravity was gone. Later, we danced so slowly we might as well have been standing. She bent her head toward my ear. "You have the most beautiful hands I've ever seen," she said. I called her 2 days later, never having believed more firmly in love at first sight, in destiny. When she laughed on the other end of the line, something inside of me cracked open, and I let her step inside. This baby's head is bothering me because it's like a piece of fruit gone bad. I understand that now, in the middle of this endless desert of sound. It's like the soft spot on the peach that you can just plunge your thumb into, with no questions asked, with not so much as a how do you do. I'm not going to, but I want to, and the urge is so serious that I put her down. She screams louder. I pick her up and lean her against me, whispering, "I love you, baby, and I'm not going to hurt you." But the first thing is a lie, and the second thing might be a lie, but I'm just not sure. I should have the urge to protect her, but all I can think about is that soft spot, that place where I could hurt her if I tried, where I could hurt her if I wanted to. A month after we met, Bad was packing a glass bowl as she straddled me, poking the weed gently with her finger. When she tipped the lighter to it and inhaled, her body shuddered along an invisible curve, and the smoke crawled out of her mouth, one limb at a time. An animal. "I haven't done this before," I told her. She handed me the pipe, cupped her hand around the bowl, and lit. I inhaled. Something flew into my windpipe, and I coughed so hard I was certain there'd be blood. "Let's try this," she said. She took a hit and put her mouth on mine, filling my lungs with heady smoke. I took it in, all of it, desire shooting straight through me. As we languished there, I felt my whole self loosening, my mind retreating to a place somewhere around my left ear. She showed me around her old neighbourhood, and I was so high that I let her take my hand and guide me like a child. And then we were in the Brooklyn Museum, and there was a long table that never seemed to end, suggestive and flowering plates for the primordial goddess, for Virginia Woolf. We were somewhere in Little Russia, and then a drugstore, and then a beach, and all I could feel was her hand and the warm hug of sand around my feet. "I want to show you something," she said, and she walked me across the Brooklyn Bridge as the sun fell away. We took some days. We drove to Wisconsin to see the Jelly Man, who, as it turned out, was dead. We turned and drove to the ocean, an island off the coast of Georgia. We drifted in winter warm as soup. I held her, and in the levity of the water, she held me. "The ocean," she said, "is a big les. I can tell." "But not one of history," I said. "No," she agreed, "of space and time." I considered this. My legs gently scissored through the water. My lips tasted like salt. "Yes," I said. In the distance, grey humps rolled out of the sea. I imagined sharks and the mincemeat of our bodies. "Dolphins," she breathed, and made it so. We sank. She was so much older than I was, but rarely reminded me. She slid her hands up my thighs in public places and told me her darkest story, and asked about mine. I felt like she was seared into my timeline, unchangeable as Pompeii. She would shove me down onto the bed and hold herself upright with my pelvis, and I would let her be there, want her to be there, feel the weight of her, the clarity that settled over me. We'd peel off our clothes because they didn't belong between us. I would look over her smooth, pale skin, the pink shock of her labia, and kiss her mouth in a way that sent quakes straight to my fault lines, and think, "Thank God we cannot make a baby," because she seized something inside of me that delivered me straight from her bed, from her mouth, from her cunt and her angles and low voice, and dropped me into my first domestic fantasy, our first joint daydream. The Uptown Cafe on Kirkwood, wiping soft little gnocchi pieces from the gabbling chin of a baby. Of our baby. We would joke and call her Mara, talk about her first words and her funny hair and her bad habits. Mara. A girl. Mara. Our girl. Back in Bad's bed, in the good bed, as she slid her hand into me, and I pulled and she gave, and I opened and she came without touching herself, and I responded by losing all speech. I thought, thank God we cannot make a baby. We can fuck senselessly and endlessly and come into each other. No condoms or pills or fear or negotiating days of the month or slumping against bathroom counters, holding that stupid white stick up for inspection. Thank God we cannot make a baby. And when she said, come for me, come in me, thank God we cannot make a baby. We made a baby. Here she is. We were in love, and I dreamt of our future. The home in the middle of the Indiana woods, an old chapel that once housed a cloister of nuns who prayed with their shoulders pressed against each other, and who took vows and called each other sister. A stone exterior, dried mortar pinched and oozing, narrow paths winding through old gardens, a new garden, where we have turned the earth and put things into it, things that will grow if we care for them. A large circle of stained glass, as tall as me, depicting a pouting, bleeding heart in slender slivers of smoky rose glass. 2 of the panels cracked from age. Then a kitchen with dark wood cabinets that opened to reveal long-stemmed wine glasses, teak boxes full of cloudy silverware, a stove littered with 20-gallon pots and pans, a collection of 6 dozen mugs that we have found beautiful or ironic over the years, stacks of plates with chipped edges, a good set for company that we never have. Nearby, a small table with an empty wicker basket, an assortment of solid, unpainted chairs, and catching the light from the window, a collection of glass jars. The labels peeled away. Bands of glue rubbed off with a persistent finger, all with the intent of reuse. Beyond the table, there is an altar, with candles lit for Billie Holiday and Willa Cather and Hypatia and Patsy Cline. Next to it, an old podium that once held a Bible, on which we have repurposed an old chemistry handbook as the Book of Lilith. In its pages is our own liturgical calendar, Saint Clementine and all wayfarers, Saints Lorena Hickok and Eleanor Roosevelt, observed in the summer with blueberries to symbolize the sapphire ring, the Vigil of St. Juliet, complete with mints and dark chocolate, Feast of the Poets, during which Mary Oliver is recited over beds of lettuce, Kay Rain over a dish of vinegar and oil, Audre Lorde over cucumbers, Elizabeth Bishop over some carrots, the exaltation of Patricia Highsmith, celebrated with escargot boiling in butter and garlic and cliffhangers recited by an autumn fire, the ascension of Frida Kahlo, with self-portraits and costumes, the presentation of Shirley Jackson, a writer holiday started at dawn and ended at dusk with a gambling game played with lost milk teeth and stones. Some of them with their own books, the major and minor arcana of our little religion. In the fridge, pickled cucumbers and green beans crowding ridged jars, 2 glass containers of milk, 1 good, 1 sour, a carton of half and half, birth control from the age of men that I still hadn't thrown away, a near black eggplant, a jar of horseradish, the shape of a bar of soap, olives, sweet Italian peppers tense as hearts, soy sauce, bloody streaks hidden away in the dry fold of paper, leaking shamefully, a cheese drawer with balls of fresh mozzarella floating in their own milky water broth, and salami with a dusty white tubing that smells, bad swears like semen, rotting leeks that will be added to the compost pile, candied onions, shallots the size of fists. In the freezer, cracked plastic ice trays, with cubes swollen past their banks. Pesto made from the basil plants in the garden. Cookie dough that will be eaten raw, despite health warnings. The cupboards, when opened, are cluttered with extra virgin olive oil, half a dozen bottles, some full of forests of rosemary and fat bulbs of peeled garlics, sesame oil whose glass bottle never seems to lose the greasy sheen on its outside, no matter how many times it is wiped clean. Coconut oil, half a waxy white solid, half like plasma, cans of black-eyed peas and cream of mushroom soup, boxes of almonds, a small sack of raw organic pine nuts, stale oyster crackers, eggs on the counter, brown and pale green and speckled and irregular in size. One of them has gone bad, but you can't tell from the outside. You'll only figure it out if you put it in a glass of water and it floats like a witch. In the bedroom there is a queen-sized bed, a raft in the middle of a great stone ocean. On the dresser rolls a light bulb that, if held close to the ear and agitated, would reveal the broken filament rattling in the glass. Necklaces rope old wine bottles like nooses. Frosted stoppers silence glass decanters. A nightstand that, when opened, reveals, "Shut that, please." In the bathroom, a mirror flecked with mascara, from when Bad leans in close, the amoeba of her breath growing and shrinking. You never live with a woman. You live inside of her. I overheard my father say to my brother once. And it was, indeed, as if, when peering into the mirror, you were blinking out through her thickly fringed eyes. And outside the door, nature. The spinning, breathtaking cathedral of the sky arches above the trees. Trees that bend lush and neon green in spring, all buds, then bloom. Sudden rain breaks the tender leaves from their stems and lays the floor thick with a bright carpet. In the tangle of branches, baby birds, the grey and pink of half-cooked shrimp, and with bones like dried spaghetti, scream for their mothers. Then the hazy buzz of summer saunters in, and the air screeches and hums. Cicada-killing wasps catch the weakest and stab them motionless, hauling the weight of their bodies from their glass wings up and somewhere else. Fireflies drunkenly dazzle the dark. The leaves are full, dark green, the trees dense and folded in on themselves, catching secrets. And only the violent tear of thunder and the bleach burn of lightning can pull the grove apart. And then autumn. The first autumn. Our first autumn. The first squash dish. The sweaters. The burning smell of the space heater. Never leaving the heavy blankets. The scent of smoke that reminds me of a Girl Scout and being 12 and camping with girls who hate me. The leaves catch fire. Colour burning away green like a disease. More rain. Another carpet of leaves. Yellow as dandelions. Red as pomegranate skin. Orange as carrot peels. There are strange evenings when the sun sets in, but it rains anyway. And the sky is gold and peach, and also grey and purple, like a bruise. Every morning a fine mist coats the grove. Some nights a bloody harvest moon rises over the horizon and stains the clouds like an alien sunrise. And then the dry and curl, the slow approach of death on trillions of radial feet. Peristalsis perfect winter beast, the ground more exposed than we thought possible. The trees alone, the howling groan of the wind, the smell of the coming of snow. Blizzard throughout the night, illuminated by nothing out here in the woods and in the darkness, except for a flashlight beam from the other side of the window, which catches the fat flakes descending before they vanish beyond its reach. Inside, parched and itchy skin, cool lotion whirled onto backs, fucking, muffling the cries, holding each other in a pocket of warmth beneath the quilts. And in the morning, we shove open the door, two bodies wrapped and huffing to free themselves into a world where they do not want to go, snowdrifts turning the nuances of nature into bumps, reminding us to keep perspective, reminding us that everything has a season, reminding us that time passes, and so will we one day. And at the edge of the clearing, mittens turn over Mara's tiny hands into cartoons. Her puffy jacket is zipped up to her small nose, and a woolen hat protects her fine brown hair. And we are reminded that we are alive. We love each other all of the time and like each other most of the time, and that women can turn children into this world like breathing. Mara reaches out and up, not for us, but for some unseen presence, a voice, the shadow of a once none, unghosts of a future civilization that will populate this forest with a city long after we are dead. Mara reaches up, and we walk over to her and take her hand. Our baby cries. I hold her up to me. She is too small for food, I think. Too small for balancing her on my hip. I tear through my half-empty fridge, shoving aside Tupperware with velvety leftovers, a can wrapped in tinfoil. I find a jar of applesauce, but none of my spoons are small enough for her mouth. I dip my finger in the applesauce and offer it to her. She sucks hard. I rest my hand against the crown of her skull, kiss her delicate skin with baby oil. She snuffles and sobs, bits of applesauce bubbling out of her mouth. Egg, I ask her. She sneezes. Apple, dog, girl, boy. The baby does look like me, and bad. My pointy nose and brown hair, my sulky pout, her round chin and detached earlobes, the open, howling mouth. That's all bad. I stop, the danger of this joke still firing in my brain even as I realise that bad isn't here to hear it, to pause whatever she is doing to raise an eyebrow at me, maybe scold me for saying such a thing in front of our daughter, or maybe throw a glass at my head. I pull my phone out of my pocket with my free hand and dial. Bad's voice echoes mechanically on other end and carves new spaces into me. Beep. I leave her a message. What I say. Why did you leave her with me? What I want to say. This almost broke me. But it didn't. It made me stronger than before. You have made me better. Thank you. I will love you until the end of time. I wanted too much from her, I think. I demanded too much. I love you, I murmured while asleep, while awake, into her hair, into her neck. Please don't call me that, I reminded her. I would never talk like that to you. I only want you, I swear, I said, when paranoia crept into her voice like an infection. I believe in a world where impossible things happen, where love can outstrip brutality, can neutralize it, as though it never was, or transform it into something new and more beautiful, where love can outdo nature. The baby nurses. I don't know on what, but she suckles just the same. Her gums catch and it hurts, but I don't want her to stop, because I am her mother, and she needs what she needs, even if it's not a true thing. She bites, and I cry out, but she is so small, and I cannot put her down. Mara, I whisper. She looks at me, directly at me, as if she recognised her name. I press my lips to her forehead and rock her back and forth, quietly gasping for air. She is real. She is real. She is solid in my arms. She smells clean and new. No mistakes. She is not yet a girl, or a monster, or anything. She is just a baby. She is ours. I make Mara a crib by shoving my bed into a corner. I build walls with small embroidered pillows. I lay her down. She starts to scream again. It comes from nowhere and goes on, endless and even as the horizon at sea. It doesn't taper. She doesn't inhale for breath. Her flailing hands catch my face, cut it a little. I lay her down on the bed. "Mara," I say. "Mara, please, please don't." And she doesn't stop. It goes on and on. For hours I bounce next to her on the bed, and the howling has filled the room, and I cannot unhear it. And the clean smell of baby is replaced by something red-hot, like the burner of an electric stove with nothing on it. I touch her little feet, and she screams, and I blow raspberries on her belly, and she screams, and something inside of me is breaking. I am a continent, but I will not hold. A teacher overheard Bad screaming at me on the phone from the next bathroom stall. I knew she was there. I saw her high-heeled feet displayed on the tile. I heard her take in a breath as Bad's voice dropped low and cold and leaked through the receiver like gas. She waited until I was gone to leave. She awkwardly addressed it in the hallway that afternoon, her hands twisting around the cap of a ballpoint pen. "I guess," she said, "all I'm saying is that it's just not normal. I'm just worried for you." "You're so kind to reach out," I said. "I'm just saying that if it always sounds like that, then even if you think something is there, nothing is there." She accidentally flipped the cap out of her hands, and it went skittering down the long hallway. "Let me know if you want me to call someone, okay?" I nodded, and she walked away. Even as she vanished around the corner, I was still nodding. Mara pauses for breath. So much time has passed that light streaks the sky outside of the window. She takes me in again, my whole self into her eyes, all of my shame and pain and the truth of her mother's, the honest truth of them. I feel a jolt, my secret slipping from me, unwilling. Then the screaming begins again. But I can endure it, because of that precious moment. That break. My tolerance is fresh again. My love renewed. If she gives me one of these every day or so, I should be fine. I can do this. I can be a good mother. I brush my finger along her curls and sing her a song from my childhood. Bill Grogan's goat was feeling fine, ate 3 red shirts from off the line. Bill took a stick, gave him a whack, and tied him to the railroad. My voice cracks and falls into silence. She pedals her feet in the air and howls, and my ears are ringing. And I crawl onto the bed next to her, my pleas swallowed by her voice. I don't want to leave the room. I don't want to sleep. I am afraid that if I sleep, I will wake up, and Mara will be gone. And in the silence, entropy will take over, and my cells will expand, and I will become one with the air. If I turn away, even for a second, I will look back, and this will be just a mass of blankets and pillows. As empty a bed as it ever has been. If I blink, her form could dissolve beneath my fingers, and once again, it will be just me, undeserving, alone. When I wake up, she is still here. It feels like a sign. If she cried in the night, I did not hear it. I slept the kind of sleep where you wake up and know that you didn't flop around like a fucking hooked fish, and didn't keep me up all goddamn night with your sleep weeping. Jesus Christ, you know that you were good and still. So my joints feel like the fat rubber bands used to bind broccoli, and my face is lined where I'd stupidly slept, sleep pressed against the seams of the quilt's patchwork. Mara is not crying. She's pumping her arms and legs around like pistons. Her eyes are opening and closing, Morning glories screwing up tightly in the midday sun. Venus flytraps yawning wide to vibrations and heat. I stand up and squint into the morning. Mara makes a squeaking noise. I pick her up. She seems heavier than yesterday. Is that possible? As soon as I step out of the bedroom, she begins to scream again. We take a bus to Indianapolis. Transfer in a daze. She sleeps in my arms and does not stir, except to scream. Decibels swallowing all conscious thought. The bodies around me, rumpled and stale, do not react appreciatively to the silence or angrily to the sound, for which I am grateful. When we get off the bus in Bloomington, I remember that it is spring. I find a ride with a kind woman who reminds me of someone I have forgotten. We drive along the highway until I ask her to stop. There's nothing here, she says. Her body language is almost purposely relaxed. The leaves rustle, as if in answer. Let me take you downtown, she says. Or is there someone I can call for you? I get out, Mara in the crook of my arm. It has rained recently. The mud is caking around my sneakers, more and more with each step. I walk like a colossal monster, ready to level a city. There, up the slope of a hill, is a house. Our house. I recognize the stained glass, the smoke curling from the chimney and lacing up through the canopy of the trees. The picnic table outside needs a fresh coat of paint. An aging German shepherd, all bones and skin, is draped over the edge of a porch, his tail thumping in happiness as we approach. "Otto," I say, and he lets me squeeze the ruff of his neck. He taps his jowls against my palm and then licks it clean. The door is unlocked because Bad and I trust our neighbours. The birds. Inside, the floors are stone. I recognise the cabinets, the bed. Mara is silent in my arms. She does not even squirm. Perhaps she has been crying so much because she hasn't been home. But now she is home, and now she is quiet. I sit down at a desk and roll a heavy pen across the wood. I run my fingers over the row of books along the wall. Behind the bookcase, a thin crack meanders through the plaster. Deliberate. I touch it with my fingertip, trace it up, until it is past my height. Part of me wants to move the bookshelf, look behind it, but there is no need. I know what's there. I unwrap cured salmon from the fridge and examine it. The meat is drawn back from the forgotten pin bones, like diseased gum from teeth. I make a mark deep in the flesh with my finger, and something inside of me is sated. I press my cheek against the wavy glass window pane. Otto has followed us inside, and is trailing behind me, bumping his cold nose into Mara's foot. I pull a cookbook off the counter and flip it open. The cover thuds. Aunt Julia's bean salad, I read. So much dill. The last night of us, Bad threw me into a wall. I wish I could remember why. It seems like context would matter. She was all bone and muscle and skin and light and laughter one minute, and then a tornado the next. A shadow passing over her face like a solar eclipse. My head cracked the plaster. Light sparked behind my eyes. "You cunt," she screamed. "I hate you. I fucking hate you. I have always hated you." I crawled to the bathroom and locked the door. From the outside she rained punches into the wall like a hailstorm, and I turned on the shower and undressed and stepped inside. I'm a cancer, a water baby, always. For a moment I was there, the Indiana woods, the rain striking the leaves, the the gentle Sunday morning drizzle during which we slept, only waking to see a sleepy preteen Mara come in, complain about a nightmare, and curl into our arms. This will not always last. One day she will be too big for this, and for us, her old mothers. Then the not memory washed away like a wet painting in a storm, and I was in the shower, shaking, and she was outside, losing me, and there was no way for me to tell her not to. There was no way for me to tell her that we are so close. We are so close. Please don't do this now. We are so fucking close. What do you think, Mara? I ask her, spinning around a few times before coming to rest against a wall. I lay her down on the heirloom quilt that is snapped smartly over the big bed. One day I want to teach Mara to quilt like this, the way her grandmother did, and the way that I am learning. We could start small. Baby quilts. You can do one of those in a night. Otto barks. The door opens, and around it curves a skinny arm, then a face, and a bright yellow backpack. A little girl of 10 or 11, hair in an unravelling braid. It is Mara, old enough to walk, old enough to speak, old enough to be bullied and then to face the bullies down, old enough to ask questions without answers and have problems without solutions. Behind her, another child, a boy, her baby brother, Tristan. I remember his birth like it happened last week, like it is happening now. He was all blood and sideways. He was up in my ribs and refused the midwife's advances. Even now my stomach is still not the same. The walls once severed and pulled apart, and he will grow. And then he grew, and Tristan followed after Mara, and follows her still. She said she hated it, but she loved it. I could tell she adored the attention. Mara and Tristan, brown-haired children, brown like somebody's grandmother, maybe mine. A man behind them, and a woman, both staring at me. The woman tells Mara to stay away. The man clutches baby Tristan across his chest. They ask me who I am, and I answer them. Otto barks. The woman calls him, but he barks at her and at me, and does not cede his ground. Mara, remember how you kicked sand into that neighbour child's eyes? I yelled at you and made you apologise in your best dress. And that night I cried by myself in the bathroom, because you are Bad's child as much as you are mine. Remember when you ran into the plate glass window and cut your arm so badly we had to drive you to the nearest hospital in the pickup truck? And when it was over, Bad begged me to replace the back seat because of all the blood? Or when Tristan told us that he wanted to invite a boy to prom, and you put your arm around him like this? Mara, remember, your own babies, your husband with his Captain Ahab beard and calloused hands, and the house you bought in Vermont. Mara, how you still love your little brother with the ferocity of a star, an all-consuming love that will only end when one of you collapses. The drawings you handed us as children, your paintings of dragons, Tristan's photographs of dolls, your stories about anger, his poems about angels, the science experiments in the yard, blackening the grass to gloss, your lives sated and solid, strange but safe. Do you remember? Why are you crying? Don't cry. Don't. You cried a lot as a baby, but you've been so stoic ever since. Inside of me, a voice. There was nothing tying her to you. There was nothing tying you to her, And you made it anyway. You made them anyway. Fuck you. You made them anyway. Tamara and her brother, I say, stop running. You'll fall. Stop running, you'll break something. Stop running, your mother will see. She will see, and she will be so angry. And she will yell, and we cannot. We cannot. I cannot. I say, don't leave the faucet on. You'll flood the house. Don't do it. You promised it would never happen again. Don't flood the house. The bills. Don't flood the house. The rugs. Don't flood the house. My loves. Or we could lose you both. We've been bad mothers, and have not taught you how to swim. I hope you enjoyed listening to those stories. If you were studying, or sleeping, or just doing anything else in the meantime, whilst I was on in the background. I'll see you guys again soon. Let me know if you have any thoughts on them in the comments. It feels weird to say comments as if I'm asking you to write comments, but really, I would just happily talk about anyone's ideas on those stories if you enjoyed them, or if you have any that you would like me to read another time. But for now,